For decades, fans of ABBA held on to a dream that the iconic Swedish group would one day step back in the spotlight. From the mid-1970s until the early 1980s, ABBA had captured the hearts of millions around the world with their infectious melodies, dazzling harmonies, and unforgettable performances. Songs like Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, and The Winner Takes It All became instant classics, and their influence spread far beyond Sweden, reaching audiences in Europe, North America, Asia, and beyond. Every ABBA fan knew that behind the glittering costumes and joyful tunes, there was a story of four individuals whose personal lives were deeply intertwined with their music. Benny Andersson, one of the group's founding members and the primary composer alongside Björn Ulvaeus, eventually revealed that the decision not to reunite was never about money or missed opportunities. Instead, it was about something far more delicate and personal. The emotional spark that once bound the group together, a spark that had faded over the years due to the pressures of fame, personal relationships, and the natural changes in life that occur over decades. Benny's reflections are not just a revelation about the business side of music or the demands of global superstardom. They are also a glimpse into the human side of ABBA, the side that fans rarely saw. The group's refusal to reunite for decades was rooted in honesty, dignity, and a recognition that some things, once lost, cannot be recreated without losing their meaning. ABBA's story is not simply one of pop success. It is a story of creativity, love, heartbreak, perseverance, and ultimately, respect for oneself and others. To understand why the group never returned to the stage in the traditional sense, it is important to look back at their beginnings, how their music intertwined with their personal lives, and how the pressures of fame affected the emotional bonds that had once united them so strongly. The journey of ABBA began in the 1960s, long before their global breakthrough. Benny Andersson had already earned a reputation as a talented keyboardist in Sweden, performing with a popular band known as the Hep Stars. Around the same time, Björn Ulvaeus, who was also building his career as a musician, formed a connection with Benny that would become the foundation of their lifelong creative partnership. In 1966, their shared passion for music led them to collaborate, spending countless nights at the piano, experimenting with melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that hinted at something bigger than their small-scale performances could contain. Their collaboration grew stronger as they explored their musical ideas, blending their individual talents into compositions that were both innovative and emotionally resonant. A few years later, in 1969, the two women who would complete the group entered their lives. Agnetha Faltskog, already a solo singer with growing popularity in Sweden, and Anni-Frid Lyngstad, known affectionately as Frida, a gifted vocalist with her own following, joined forces with Benny and Björn. As relationships developed, both romantic and professional, the four became tightly connected, forging a unique bond that combined music, personal affection, and artistic ambition. Björn and Agnetha, as well as Benny and Anni-Frid, developed romantic relationships that were publicly visible, giving the band an image of a closely knit quartet in every sense. This combination of personal ties and professional collaboration would come to define ABBA in ways that no other band could replicate. Early projects, like their 1972 single People Need Love, showed promise and revealed the potential for international success. The following year, their attempt at the Swedish Eurovision selection with the song Ring Ring confirmed their formula worked, blending catchy melodies with harmonized vocals that could appeal to audiences far beyond Sweden. Even though they did not win Eurovision that year, it became clear that Benny and his bandmates were on the verge of something extraordinary, laying the foundation for a career that would soon captivate the world. By 1974, ABBA's journey had reached a turning point that would define their place in music history forever. Their performance of Waterloo at the Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton, England, was more than just a competition entry. It was the moment the world was introduced to a band that combined energy, emotion, and unmatched musical skill. The flamboyant costumes, catchy chorus, and polished stage presence captured the attention of viewers across Europe, and when the announcement came that ABBA had won, it marked the beginning of a global phenomenon. Suddenly, the quartet that started with late-night piano sessions in small Swedish clubs became international superstars overnight. Their fame spread at a pace that few artists could imagine, reaching countries far beyond their homeland, and their music began to dominate radio waves, record stores, and public consciousness. Benny Andersson and Björn Ulvaeus, who had spent years perfecting their craft in relative anonymity, were now thrust into a level of visibility and responsibility that was both thrilling and daunting. At the same time, Agnetha Faltskog and Annie Frid Lyngstad found themselves in a unique position of being not only successful musicians, but also public figures whose personal lives were scrutinized in ways that were unprecedented for Swedish artists. The pressure of balancing creative ambitions with public expectations placed tremendous demands on the group, but also pushed them to innovate, experiment, and refine a sound that was uniquely theirs. Following the victory at Eurovision, ABBA released several singles and albums that would cement their popularity, including hits like SOS, Fernando, and Mamma Mia. Each release showcased the group's ability to combine upbeat, infectious melodies with lyrics that often contained subtle emotional undertones, revealing their ability to connect with listeners on multiple levels. The music was joyful and celebratory on the surface, yet also carried hints of melancholy, a signature element that would later become more pronounced as the group navigated personal challenges. Concerts became larger, tours expanded across continents, and ABBA became a fixture not just in pop music, but in global culture. Fans adored the group not only for their music, but also for the apparent harmony between the four members, a harmony that was both musical and personal. Yet beneath the glittering exterior, the pressures of fame and the complexities of personal relationships were quietly beginning to strain the bonds that had formed years earlier. Benny and Bjorn continued to focus on songwriting, striving to capture the essence of their collective experiences while staying true to the band sound. Agnetha and Annie Frid, meanwhile, faced the challenge of performing night after night while managing the emotional weight of their personal lives. The public saw confident, smiling performers, but behind the scenes, the group was navigating emotional highs and lows, personal heartbreaks, and the relentless demands of the music industry. These underlying tensions, while not immediately visible to fans, would eventually play a significant role in the decisions that led to ABBA's hiatus and their eventual refusal to reunite, demonstrating that fame and success, no matter how dazzling, often come with hidden costs that only the members themselves fully understand. Benny Andersson later reflected that this period was one of intense creativity, joy, and pressure all at once, a time when the band's accomplishments were extraordinary, but the personal toll was quietly mounting. The combination of immense success, personal challenges, and the ever-present expectation performed perfectly created a situation where the emotional foundation of the group, though strong in public, was beginning to show signs of fragility. It was a delicate balance of artistry, personal connection, and professional responsibility, and it was this balance that would ultimately shape the choices the members made about the future, including the decision not to reunite on stage despite opportunities that would have been unimaginable to any other group. By the late 1970s, the glittering success of ABBA began to reveal a hidden, more fragile side of the group, a side that the public rarely saw, but which deeply affected their ability to continue performing together. While fans were dazzled by sold-out concerts, television appearances, and hit records, behind the scenes the members were grappling with personal challenges that would change the course of their careers. In 1979, the first major crack appeared when Bjorn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Faltskog, whose romantic relationship had been a central part of ABBA's public image, announced their divorce. To outsiders, it seemed almost impossible to imagine that the faces of a beloved pop phenomenon could no longer share the intimacy and connection they had once enjoyed, yet they made the difficult choice to prioritize professionalism over personal heartbreak. Both Bjorn and Agnetha continued performing together, maintaining the facade of unity for their fans, but privately the experience was emotionally exhausting. Agnetha later admitted that singing love songs beside her former husband required an extraordinary level of emotional composure, forcing her to mask grief and personal turmoil behind the polished performances that fans had come to expect. Just 2 years later, in 1981, Benny Andersson and Annie Frid Lyngstad faced a similar rupture when their marriage ended. Once again, the emotional foundation of the band was shaken, as two couples who had been deeply connected both personally and professionally were now navigating the difficult waters of separation while still working together. These divorces were not just personal setbacks. They were events that rippled through every aspect of ABBA's collaborative process. The music itself began to reflect this change. While earlier hits often combined joy with subtle hints of melancholy, later songs became more explicitly introspective, exploring themes of loss, regret, and the complexities of love. Albums like Super Trooper and The Visitors captured this shift, with tracks such as The Winner Takes It All and One of Us resonated with fans not merely as pop songs, but as emotional confessions that mirrored the private realities of the band members. The pressure to maintain appearances, while continuing to write, record, and tour at the height of their fame, contributed to a sense of burnout that was felt acutely by all four members. Agnetha struggled with anxiety and a fear of flying, making international tours particularly stressful, while Annie Frid increasingly valued privacy and withdrew from the constant public spotlight. Benny and Bjorn, although still highly productive in songwriting, recognized that the fun and spontaneity that had characterized the group's earlier years were fading. By the early 1980s, it became clear that ABBA's hiatus was not the result of external pressures alone, but a combination of personal choices, emotional exhaustion, and the realization that the relationships which had once fueled their creativity were no longer sustainable in the same way. Despite this, the group remained remarkably professional, completing recording projects and releasing final singles such as A Day Before You Came and Under Attack, which conveyed a quieter, more reflective tone compared to their earlier exuberance. There was no dramatic farewell tour, no public announcement of a breakup. Instead, ABBA faded from the stage with dignity, leaving a legacy that was preserved in the music itself. For Benny Andersson, the decision not to reunite in the decades that followed was influenced not only by the fading of creative chemistry, but also by the emotional scars that remained from those intense years. He and his bandmates understood that attempting to recreate the past would risk diminishing the very magic that had made ABBA extraordinary. In this sense, their choice to step away was an act of preservation, ensuring that the band would be remembered for its brilliance, rather than being seen as a group trying to revive something that no longer existed in the same way. It was a rare combination of wisdom and humility, recognizing that some chapters in life are meant to remain closed, even when the world still hopes for a reunion. The story of ABBA's personal struggles highlights the often unseen challenges behind the glamorous image of fame, showing that creativity, love, and ambition, while powerful, can also be fragile and fleeting when confronted with the realities of human emotion and change. Even after decades had passed since ABBA's last performance in the early 1980s, the world's fascination with the group never waned. Fans continued to hope for a reunion, imagining one final tour that would allow them to see their favorite band live once more. The demand for ABBA's music remained remarkably high, fueled not only by nostalgia but also by new generations discovering their songs through movies, musicals, and cover bands. In 1992, the release of ABBA Gold, a greatest hits compilation, confirmed that their appeal was as strong as ever, selling over 30 million copies worldwide and introducing their music to an entirely new audience. Over the years, rumors of secret meetings, possible reunions, and even recording sessions circulated constantly, keeping the possibility of comeback alive in fans' imaginations. The ultimate test of this enduring interest came in the year 2000, when the group reportedly received an offer to reunite for a world tour worth an astounding $1 billion, an amount that could have guaranteed each member $250 million. To most people, this offer seemed irresistible. Money of that scale was unimaginable, and the chance to perform for adoring crowds around the world again would have been a dream for many artists. Yet, ABBA's response was clear and decisive. They said no. Benny Andersson later explained that the decision was never about financial reward. The group understood that the music and experience of performing together could not simply be recreated through motivation or monetary incentives. The magic that had defined ABBA, the emotional spark that had allowed them to write songs that combined joy and melancholy so seamlessly, could not be forced, no matter how large the stage or the paycheck. Bjorn Ulvaeus echoed this sentiment, stating that even if the deal had been formalized on paper, it would not have changed their minds. Agnetha Faltskog, reflecting on the proposal in 2013, emphasized the practical impossibility of the undertaking, noting that a schedule demanding hundreds of shows was far beyond what any of them could or wanted to commit to. Annie Frid Lyngstad also reinforced the perspective that the emotional and personal boundaries they had established after decades away from the spotlight were non-negotiable. By this point, ABBA's members had built separate lives, pursued individual projects, and found a sense of peace outside the constant pressures of fame. Benny and Bjorn channeled their creativity into musicals like Chess, while Agnetha and Annie Frid focused on family privacy and selective musical endeavors. Their refusal of the billion-dollar offer was therefore not an act of stubbornness or disinterest in their fans, but a deliberate choice to protect themselves, their relationships, and the integrity of the band's legacy. The decision highlights a rare aspect of ABBA's career. They valued personal well-being and artistic truth over financial gain and public spectacle, even when the potential reward was extraordinary. While fans and the media speculated endlessly about what could have been, the members themselves were content knowing that their contributions to music history remained untarnished. This refusal also reflects the reality that emotional history cannot be rewritten. The divorces, personal struggles, and pressures of touring and performance had created cracks in the relationships that formed ABBA's core. Attempting to step back on stage as if those years had not happened would have risked undermining both the authenticity of their music and the dignity they had preserved by stepping away in the first place. Benny Andersson often described this period as one of reflection and acceptance, acknowledging that the world's fascination with ABBA's music was eternal, but the band's time performing together was finite. The choice not to reunite in the traditional sense was therefore a continuation of the band's ethos. Honesty over spectacle, dignity over temptation, and emotional truth over financial incentive. In doing so, ABBA set an example rarely seen in the music industry, demonstrating that sometimes the greatest act of respect for fans is to preserve the magic of the original experience rather than risk diluting it with repetition or compromise. The refusal of the reunion offer, then, becomes more than a business decision. It is a testament to the members' integrity, their understanding of the fragile balance between art and life, and their desire to leave a legacy that remains untarnished by forced nostalgia or emotional compromise. After ABBA stepped away from the stage in 1982, the silence that followed was almost as remarkable as the music they had created. For fans around the world, the sudden disappearance of a band that had dominated the charts and redefined pop culture left a void that no other artist could fill. The four members, Benny Andersson, Björn Ulvaeus, Agnetha Faltskog, and Annie Frid Lyngstad, moved on with their lives, focusing on personal pursuits, solo music, and family. Yet despite their absence, ABBA's influence only grew. Tribute bands began performing their hits in arenas. Musicals such as Mamma Mia brought their music to the theater stage, and films adapted from their songs introduced ABBA to a new generation of fans. Through it all, the original members remained absent from live performance, creating a near-mythical aura around their legacy. Rumors of reunions, secret recordings, or possible appearances were constant, but none came to fruition. Behind the scenes, Benny Andersson and Björn Ulvaeus continued collaborating creatively, notably on the musical chess, which allowed them to channel their songwriting skills into a different medium while leaving ABBA's pop identity untouched. Meanwhile, Agnetha and Annie Frid retreated from public life, valuing privacy and family over the pressures of touring and the intense scrutiny of fame. For decades, it seemed the band would never perform together again, leaving fans to wonder whether the magic of ABBA could ever be recaptured. This long silence, however, did not signal an end to creativity or collaboration. Rather, it set the stage for an unprecedented return, one that neither money nor nostalgia could have achieved alone. By the late 2000s, technological advances opened a new possibility: the creation of digital avatars, allowing performers to appear on stage in ways that were previously unimaginable. This idea sparked the concept of ABBA Voyage, a project that would bring the band's music to life through highly realistic digital representations of their younger selves, performing alongside a live band. For Benny Andersson, Björn Ulvaeus, Agnetha Faltskog, and Annie Frid Lyngstad, the project offered a solution that respected both their personal boundaries and their legacy. They could share the joy of ABBA's music with fans worldwide, without reliving the intense pressures of touring, enduring long flights, or facing the emotional weight of performing songs tied to personal heartbreak. The recording sessions for Voyage were approached as an experiment. At first, the members were uncertain whether the chemistry that had defined their earlier work could be recaptured in a studio setting, especially after decades of separation and individual experiences. Yet as they began playing together again, the magic returned in unexpected ways. Songs were recorded not for chart dominance or commercial gain, but for the sheer joy of collaboration, reminding the band members of the passion that had originally brought them together. When ABBA Voyage debuted in 2022, audiences were stunned. Fans attending the live shows experienced something entirely new: digital avatar performing with a live band, seamlessly blending the past with the present. The production's innovative approach allowed the group to maintain their artistic integrity while offering fans the emotional thrill of seeing ABBA live again. It was a reunion unlike any other, one that honored the history of the band without compromising the emotional boundaries the members had carefully maintained for decades. For Annie Frid Lyngstad, the project fulfilled a long-held dream. She described the experience as a way to celebrate their music without reopening chapters of their lives that were better left in the past. Benny Andersson summed it up simply, noting that the music itself had always been enough, and that sharing it through Voyage was a way to bring joy to fans while preserving the dignity and emotional truth of the band's story. In this way, ABBA managed to return to the world stage without repeating history or undermining their legacy, proving that innovation, honesty, and respect for oneself and one's art can create experiences that are both meaningful and timeless. The Voyage project is a testament to the group's ability to evolve, adapt, and find new ways to connect with audiences, demonstrating that even decades after stepping away, ABBA's influence and magic remain undiminished. As the years continue to pass, ABBA's story transformed from one of mere musical success into a remarkable example of legacy, integrity, and artistic respect. While many bands from the 1970s and 1980s have attempted comebacks, sometimes producing disappointing results or diminishing the impact of their earlier work, ABBA's members chose a path that was unusually thoughtful and self-aware. Benny Andersson, reflecting on the decades since their peak, emphasized that the group's decision not to reunite in the traditional sense was a conscious choice to preserve the emotional truth and authenticity that had always been central to their music. For Benny, the magic of ABBA was never just about performing live or earning money. It was about the unique chemistry between four people whose lives had been intertwined by music, romance, and shared experiences. Once the personal connections that had fueled that magic were altered by divorce, emotional strain, and the natural passage of time, it became clear that attempting a conventional reunion could not recapture what had existed before. This realization, while difficult, allowed the members to focus on projects and life paths that were meaningful to them individually, without betraying the legacy of the band. Benny's reflections highlight an important lesson in the world of creative work. Sometimes, preservation of integrity matters more than public expectation or financial reward. ABBA's refusal to return to the stage, even when offered an unimaginable sum, was an act of respect for both themselves and their fans, ensuring that the band would always be remembered at the height of their brilliance rather than risking disappointment or a diluted performance. In addition to the moral and emotional considerations, practical realities also influenced the group's choices. Agnetha Faltskog, who had struggled with anxiety and a fear of flying, found that a return to full-scale touring would be deeply stressful and potentially harmful to her well-being. Similarly, Annie Frid Lyngstad had built a private life in Switzerland, prioritizing family and personal peace over public performance. Benny and Bjorn, though still creatively active, also recognized the challenges of reconciling personal history with professional ambition. Together, these factors form a compelling case against a traditional reunion, yet the story did not end in silence. Through innovative projects like ABBA Voyage, the group found a way to reconnect with fans and celebrate their music in a form that was emotionally safe, technologically advanced, and artistically satisfying. Benny described the recording sessions as a reminder that the spark between them had never fully disappeared, but that it needed the right context to flourish again. The digital avatars of Voyage offered the perfect solution. Fans could experience the exhilaration of ABBA live without forcing the members into emotional or logistical situations they were no longer comfortable with. In reflecting on these choices, Benny often emphasized the importance of honesty with oneself, with one's collaborators, and with the audience. By refusing to compromise their well-being or recreate something that no longer existed naturally, ABBA set an example for artists everywhere. They demonstrated that it is possible to honor the past without being trapped by it, to innovate without abandoning one's principles, and provide joy to millions while maintaining personal dignity. The group's story also serves as a reminder of the human side of fame. While ABBA's music brought happiness to countless fans, the personal experiences of the members, love, heartbreak, anxiety, and joy, were inseparable from their art. Benny's reflections underscore the idea that creative work is never only about the finished product. It is deeply intertwined with the emotional and relational realities of those who create it. Choosing to step away from the stage was, in essence, a choice to respect the full humanity of the band members and to allow their music to shine without being overshadowed by personal strain or the pressures of nostalgia. In this light, ABBA's legacy is more than a collection of hits. It is a testament to integrity, self-awareness, and the power of knowing when to preserve the magic rather than attempt to recreate it artificially. For fans, scholars, and fellow musicians, Benny's insights provide a compelling lesson. Success is not measured solely by fame or wealth, but also by the ability to honor one's art, protect one's relationships, and make choices that reflect truth and dignity above all else. The careful stewardship of ABBA's story has allowed the band to remain timeless, their music untainted, and their legacy secure, a rare achievement in an industry often driven by spectacle and profit rather than principle. The story of ABBA, culminating in the Voyage project, is a remarkable testament to the enduring power of music, the complexity of human relationships, and the wisdom of knowing when to step back rather than force a reunion that could compromise both art and personal well-being. For nearly 40 years after their last performance together, Benny Andersson, Björn Ulvaeus, Agnetha Faltskog, and Annie Frid Lyngstad resisted pressure from fans, the media, and even staggering financial offers to return to the stage. Yet when the opportunity arose to engage with their audience in a way that respected both their emotional boundaries and the integrity of their music, they embraced it. ABBA Voyage allowed the band to reach fans across the world using digital avatars that perfectly captured their younger selves, performing with the energy, charm, and precision that made the group iconic, while the live band provided the authentic musical foundation that connected the virtual experience to reality. The debut of the project in 2022 was met with awe and excitement. Fans, many of whom had dreamed of seeing ABBA live for decades, were able to experience the thrill of the band in a way that bridged generations. Older fans relived memories of stadiums, albums, and radio hits, while younger audiences discovered the magic of ABBA in a form that was both modern and true to the band's original spirit. Critics praised the technological innovation, the attention to detail, and the emotional resonance of performances. For Benny Andersson and his bandmates, Voyage was not about reclaiming past glory, but about celebrating the music and the bonds that had created it, even in the absence of the traditional stage presence. Interviews with the band members following the debut revealed a mixture of relief, joy, and fulfillment. Benny noted that, after all the years of silence and speculation, returning to the studio and performing, even with digital avatars, felt unexpectedly natural. The chemistry, which had seemed fragile or lost after decades apart, returned as soon as they began collaborating in a controlled, safe environment of the recording studio. Agnetha shared that the project allowed her to engage with the music she loved without the pressures of global touring, while Annie Frid reflected on the joy of performing in a way that honored both the past and the present. The fans' reactions further validated the approach. Tears, laughter, standing ovations, and emotional engagement indicated that ABBA's music retained its power to connect people across cultures and generations. Yet beyond the spectacle, the deeper story remained intact. The choice to step away, to prioritize dignity, personal well-being, and artistic truth over the temptation of money or the allure of fame. Benny Andersson's final reflections capture the essence of ABBA's philosophy.